Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to my guests for coming. Thank you, Phoebe and Jenni. Phoebe, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Having,
Spe-
one of those weeks, but, I'm in England. We've got our third Prime Minister in 12 weeks. Aren't we lucky?
Is
Actually,
there
it's our third Prime Minister in 51 days, because 51 days ago, 52 days ago, Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. And then yesterday, we had a man named Rishi take over from a woman named Liz. So Britain's, doing really well at the moment. We could by the end of the year have 5 prime ministers if we're not careful, because this guy could collapse, the next guy could collapse, and less than 100 days left there's more than 100 days left in the year, so we could get it done.
I heard this guy has more money than the royal family.
This guy is the 222nd richest man in the United Kingdom.
Well, that's up there.
It is. He was a millionaire who married into a billionaire family.
Oh, wow.
I tell you this: the Pony Club of Great Britain put a tweet out today that said, "Rishi Sunak's the kind of dad that stays behind at the end and helps put the jumps away."
Oh, God.
And their Twitter banner is as follows: "Whether you own a pony or not, the Pony Club welcomes you."
I was wondering if there's a pool on how long this one's going to last.
Give you even money, I'll be gone by Christmas.
Really? Interesting. You guys are starting to be like Italy. They went for like 50, 60 years and had 80 or 90 different prime ministers in that time.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was just outrageous.
Well, let's put it this way. They kept on building up debt, and then they kept on devaluing their currency and building up more debt, and then devaluing their currency a bit more. And it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. It's like you go to Italy on holiday before they introduced the lira, and you'd have, to buy a cup of coffee, you'd have like money flowing off the table because, oh yes, that'll be like $1.50 for like this coffee, and it's like that'll be 4.9 trillion lira, thanks very much, and it's like flowing off the table.
And good evening, Jenni. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine. I noticed that your name is Dead Jenni, and I was wondering if that meant that you were not doing so well.
No, just today's topic.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Getting right into today's topic. Today we were going to talk about something, and I can't remember, Jenni, if it was you or Purple that first brought it up, and I wanted Purple in the stream, but unfortunately Purple is traveling today and was unable to make it. But fortunately, we were able to get Phoebe, which is a real treat because Phoebe's in the UK, and this is a terrible hour for Phoebe. But Phoebe agreed to stay up very late and join us. And the issue here is trans people and burial rights. And Jenni, I'm going to let you start us out. Is there an article you want me to bring up or a picture?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
I was one who first mentioned this to you because it's a legal kind of thing, and you're a brilliant lawyer, and all that stuff. I thought you were the person to mention it to.
I am not a lawyer, despite what popular misconceptions will have you believe.
Yeah, but you're close.
I am close. I am not a lawyer, but I am close.
Are you paralegal?
Degree. I hold a law degree, and I have done all the exams, but I am not admitted to the role of solicitors or the Bar of England and Wales, so therefore I cannot claim to be a solicitor or a barrister and cannot hold myself out to be as one.
Interesting.
Well, I am not
also,
a lawyer.
Because this is being broadcast in the United Kingdom, I have to say the following. This stream is not legal advice. Should you require individualized legal advice, please obtain your own private legal counsel. Nothing on this stream is individualized legal advice. Please do not take anything on this stream to be individualized legal advice. This is legal information only.
Actually, it's really more information about pre-planning for funeral arrangements rather than legal.
You took away the punchline.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
But what I will be saying, though, is that I will be talking the Gender Recognition Act and the Births, Marriages and Deaths Act of 1953. So,
okay.
Well, shall we begin?
Yes, go ahead. Lay out our issue for us, Jenni.
So I came across this little thing that somebody sent to somebody else about death and gender dead naming and misgendering in death. And somebody sent it to somebody else, so I grabbed it and I read it real quickly, and I sent it to Granny here, and figured it was something really interesting, and I didn't realize how widespread the issue is. It turns out that this is yet another one of those things that if the Republicans get a hold of this and realize that it's something else they can fuck with us by, virtually no states have regulations about this that guarantee the trans person to be buried with the name that they are, with the gender identity that they are. California does it now at this time, and that's one of those articles that you might be able to pick out and read. I did some quick screen dubs of some of the a couple excerpts from some of the articles I found in reading about this. It was one of the small type things. I'm at a loss. I can't look at pictures and on StreamYards. It bumps me off if I try.
Okay, you want me to put your picture up?
Or if you could just read, you could just read it. That would be adequate too, I guess. It's just a bunch of boring words to look at.
Okay. Did you which of the two did you want first? The black one or the white one?
No. There's a lot more than that. It was one of the text pictures.
Yeah.
It actually talks about a law that was passed. There's a date towards the beginning of the article and stuff like that. Darn, I wish I could have.
Well, okay. Here, I think I know which one. I think I know which one you mean.
Give it a shot.
And I will bring it up. Is this the one you wanted?
No.
Okay. Now this other one, yeah.
It should have been one of the first two that I sent you.
Well, I only got two. I got two and I got them twice.
Oh no, scroll way up. I sent them all to you.
Is this it?
No.
That's not it either. Okay.
Two of the later ones. Okay, well.
You talk for a bit and I'll scroll up and look for them.
I'll do that. California seems to be the first state that I could find any written evidence that they have taken this on as a rights issue for LGBT. It turns out that not only are transgender people affected by this, but any LGBT people can be affected by this, where they die, and their family, who may not be very supportive at all in many cases, which this is really about. People who are supportive, it's not a problem, will bury the person with complete lack of acknowledgement of their gender, their lover, their spouse, just completely ignoring their entire life, and just looking at that person they're putting in the ground as.
Is this the one?
But what Jenni was saying here is this does raise the interesting question: is who's a funeral for at the end of the day, and who is a memorial for at the end of the day? What is it that is being remembered? Are you remembering the person that has died, or are you remembering your prejudices about how you believe that person should have lived their life? And it's a very galling thing, shall we say, to know that when I die, I mean, I have people in my life who I trust that will respect my wishes, but it is very galling to know that there are no legal safeguards that there would be for any other individual that isn't trans for my death certificate to read correctly. It's not difficult and it's not hard to have the correct death certificate.
Go back to that one.
Go back to that one. Okay.
Also, I do have to complain very vigorously that you use daylight mode. I do have to complain vigorously about that, because anyone who uses daylight mode is therefore the most evil kind of human being when it comes to eyesight protection. And that's all I shall say. But, Jenni, do you have a will?
No, I do not currently, but it's certainly something that I need to think about.
So what I would say is you're in the state of Minnesota. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to write into your will your funeral arrangements and how you wanted any memorial to you to be done, is that something that you believe would be respected?
Actually, with the will ain't going to do a thing, because the will is read after all that kind of funeral stuff is all done. What you have to have is an advance directive and specific funeral pre-planning, including having paid the bill for the whole funeral deal before you do it. In California, and this is where it starts to get really weird. Throw that back up there.
I'm getting it right now.
Okay.
I lost it for a moment. There you go.
Enter male or female based on observation. Do not abbreviate or use other symbols. If sex cannot be determined after verification with medical records, inspection of the body, or other sources, enter unknown is what it should say. Do not leave this blank. What that's referring to is that in most states, the funeral director determines the gender by observation. Okay, so what if
that's different in the UK? That's slightly different in the UK because a death certificate is not issued by a funeral home in the UK.
Well, it's not there either, not here either. But the funeral director then becomes the informant who tells everybody else about the details of the death and the person and that. So
that's very interesting. That's very interesting because it's not done in the UK either. Because an informant has to be somebody that was either present at the death, or an informed next of kin, or a medical professional. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting in America. I didn't realize that it was like, rando undertaker that, receives body and goes, yeah, this person is so-and-so and this person is so-and-so. Because
they don't identify them.
No, what I'm saying is that they may not identify the person, but rando undertaker goes, well, this is a male, this is a female, this is female, and so on. It's what I'm understanding Jenni is saying.
Mm.
Yeah, but the law that they've come up with, they've changed. They're just the example we're using of what it should be for most places. The person is required to do it based on gender identity, no longer the observation of your crotch. Okay, so that's what all the states should be, but that is not what all the states are. Most of them have the antique funeral director making the observation, putting it down on the death certificate, and off it goes to everybody else who says and takes it. So imagine if you're an NB, or you're a trans woman who intended to have surgery but never got around to it before you died. Mm-hmm. They'll put you down as male, just because
or
that's
female if you're going the other way.
Yeah. Now, the cemetery follows whatever the funeral director writes. The people making the headstone have their own set of rules. Okay, and they don't play by anybody's rules except their own, and they will make the headstone based on what anybody says, that pays them the bill and has them make it. The headstone, I don't know how this all works, but the article said the headstone or grave marker is the property of the manufacturing company, and nobody can change it.
Hang on.
And nobody can change it except the manufacturer.
Surely a headstone is property of the estate of the deceased if it's paid for out of funds from the deceased.
Well,
Surely the estate owns that.
Okay. Now, in the example I read that from, I don't know if that they were referring to all states are this way, or just the one particular case that they were examining. They didn't identify what state they're examining. The detail and information on this is very, very scarce out there.
Yeah, I never
Go ahead.
I never thought about this before, but no, it can't belong to the estate of the deceased because the deceased's estate is dissolved very quickly after
Ding,
death.
ding, 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 ding.
And it's given away to the family, so it can't belong to the deceased estate.
Okay, now what they say you have to do if you're in a state that doesn't allow any of this, or guarantee any of that, you have to have an advance directive. You have to plan your funeral ahead of time and pay the bill. Then you own what it is. And although the family may choose to challenge it, they should be able to not win, because there are so many other legal documents that are dictating what's going, or what should, or what's going to happen. But there's no guarantee, again, because it's not in law. It's a decision of a judge or jury, whatever. It's a nasty situation. Now, I said it goes on with LGBT folks as well, non-trans people. 2 women are married. They've been married for a long time. One dies. The family says, "Well, we're not going to mention anything that she was gay or who her spouse was. We're not going to acknowledge that at all." Well, they can do that, and they can even have the person interred in their own grave slot, and not allow the spouse to be in the next one or the one next to them. Okay, for example, some gay people have been active in trying to change this, and they started a funeral, or I should say a cemetery portion out in Washington, I believe it is, out of what used to be called the Congressional Cemetery. Okay, and it was an old cemetery that nobody was taking care of, so it was overgrown, it was ugly, but they still have land to sell, so they were happy to sell this gay guy from Vietnam, who served in Vietnam, a plot, and show the black thing now. And this is what he did, because his partner he wanted his partner right next to him and all. And because he paid the bill and everything, that this was able to go through. And it also was able to go through because this particular cemetery was so dilapidated, and it's improved now, I guess. Do you have that one of the headstone?
The black headstone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pull that up.
He specifically designed this headstone so that it would mimic the black stone used in the Vietnam memorial. He did not put his name on it. He just put a gay Vietnam veteran. And you can see that on the left, there's the inverted triangle, which is what the gay people had to wear in Nazi Germany. But then the upright triangle, which is what the current LGBT people were using at the time, as one of their symbols. Now, the bottom inscription, I think, is just incredibly profound, and everybody should read it. If you can't read it, I will do it for you. It says, "When I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving 1." Profound stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another, and now show the white one.
Okay.
another woman had the same issue go on, and so she bought her own headstone ahead of time because she wanted her spouse next to her, and her spouse agreed to all this, and I apparently did some modeling for the actual carving that was done of the stone, and it's really quite beautiful. As soon as we see that, it doesn't have any fancy inscriptions. Oh, I sent one of just the.
Okay, you want that one? Okay,
Yeah,
I can get that one. I downloaded them both, so.
This is really beautiful. I kind of teared up a little when first time I saw it. It was quite surprising.
Sorry, I'm a little slow on this.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, lots of practice here.
Randolph has a way of doing this much faster, but I tried to figure out his method, but I couldn't figure it out.
As you can see, it's an image of the two women. It was described as lying together after sex,
lying together in repose,
in their own bed. And it's when they were young and healthy, not old 80-year-old wrinkled
all I can
bags.
say is that must have cost a fortune.
Oh, I would bet it did. If
that's marble, that must have cost a fortune. That looks awfully like marble, because you don't get that kind of nice white stone anywhere else. That's really nice. That is. I mean, from the artwork that you've got here. I mean, the amount of work that's gone into that, and I mean, also the picture is a really lovely picture as well, because the light of the picture itself really catches and shows off what's going on in here, and it really does bring it out and go, yeah, that's lovely. That's really nice. It's really good photography as well.
Now, the whole problem gets back to an issue of states' rights. Each state handles its own regulations for funerals and cemeteries and all that kind of good stuff. However, if there was a LGBT rights bill that the Congress would codify and pass, like they failed to do so far, that could pretty much set up the framework that every state would have to respect the wishes of the deceased.
Right now, they couldn't if they tried.
Right, and any step along the line there can, if there's no specific regulations or advanced directives, these family can come in and seize the body and bury it in their own way. Mm-hmm. And there's case after case after case where people have, complained about this has happened to their family.
I've got my own story I've got my own story that's kind of similar, even though, it has nothing to do with transgender issues. But
let me finish this real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That people have gone so far with trans people. They told a story about a trans woman who lived for 30, 40 years or something like that in her life with her spouse. And when she died, her family seized the body, cut her hair, allowed no makeup, and dressed her in a suit to bury her. And then, of course, put the dead name on the headstone and stuff.
What a waste of a good suit. What a waste of a good suit. I mean, for crying out loud, what a waste of a suit.
Thank you for the levity. We needed that. It's really an awful situation. I mean, this is just I think I'll be safe because my nephew is going to be my
executor.
Oh yeah, executor, not executioner.
Well, here's the thing though. You would need to move to a state that is not currently the state that you're in, because your state doesn't have the ability to have an executioner by law. So you could move to one of those wonderful states south of the Mason-Dixon line that seems to, like coming up with new and inventive ways of killing people, such as the electric chair, nitrogen hypoxia, firing squad, hanging, and everyone's favorite, lethal injection. Other execution methods are available.
Nowadays, they should just drop them a couple of fentanyl. Wouldn't that pretty much take care of it? I'm upset with this. I think that this is something that should not be. The person, when they die, okay, yes, their estate, their existence has been snuffed out, but we still are burying the body. We still are putting it somewhere, and theoretically giving it a place and a name where people come and pay it homage from time to time. And this isn't happening with relatives who are a bunch of goddamn pricks. It's just terribly wrong. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning. I think I might have. The problem with this is because it is something that has just been unspoken and untouched. Most trans people don't even know about this. Is that if this gets a hold of by the haters in places like Florida, Arkansas, and so on, they could suddenly include this in their transgender hate bills, and start regulating that the person must be buried by their birth certificate or by their birth gender. They don't need rules or anything about it. They can just do whatever they freaking want. Or by the decision of the family, or some. There's just so many ways they could screw us up permanently. We got to deal with it, but we got to not tell these people that we're dealing with it.
It's one of these things where we need to have these protections in place, and it feels very much like we're going to have to go through the fight to get them, which we don't really want to do. But a friend of mine said something on Twitter today. I just want to be known as the hot girl who makes hot content on OnlyFans. And I said, well, I just want to be known as the woman who interviews people. We don't want to make this our whole lives, but we're forced to by these self-absorbed, narcissistic, mainly white people, mainly men, who have decided to make it their business without actually knowing what the hell they're going on about. And it feels very much like this is where the next fight is. And it's a fight to the death. Quite literally, it's a fight to the death. Not necessarily the people fighting, but it's going to be a fight to the death. And what we need here is some very quiet regulations done at the administrative level that nobody gives brass monkeys about. So we're talking like state attorney generals here, secretaries of state, making like random departmental directives and saying, just do it this way. Just do it this way. And then not even going anywhere near governors or legislatures or, heaven forbid, the Supreme Court or even the court system in general. You don't want that. You just want quiet regulations passed by people you've never heard of, implemented by people you'll never interact with. That's what we want. That's what we want, because it will make life so much easier.
You still there, Jenni?
The problem is that there's all these laws that are already written to deal with what happens when a person dies. Who deals with the body? Who deals with the paperwork? Who deals with the other paperwork? Who deals with the burial? And so there isn't going to be a department that you can get some kind of shift in administrative rules and regulations.
I'm pretty sure whichever department controls the vital statistics department can just do it. I'm pretty sure, because they're the ones who will issue all the certificates, surely. Same people who issue birth certificates, surely they're the same people who issue death certificates.
I don't know. I really don't know.
They're
And
registered in the same place. They're both registered with in the county courthouse, but I don't know that they're necessarily written by the same people.
This is one of those things where, as someone who's not an American, we have these two phrases: America, land of the free, home of the bureaucrat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have another phrase: only in America does this thing happen. Only in America would this happen.
Actually, I'm not sure that it is only in America, though. Aren't you seeing the same thing over there?
We are, but there are legal routes that you can take as an individual to prevent it from happening.
Okay.
But if you don't undertake those legal routes yourself, it's quite frankly an absurdity and a nonsense. So in the UK, there are two primary pieces of legislation which govern death and your body and what happens to it when you die. You have the 1953 Births, Marriages and Deaths, Registrations, etc. Act, and the Coroners and Justice Act 2009. Now, if you're a trans person, there's a third piece of legislation which we need to throw into this mix, and that is the Gender Recognition Act of 2004. So these three pieces of legislation, they all work in concert together. So the Births, Marriages and Deaths Act of 1953, that one governs what a death certificate looks like and what must be on a death certificate. So under UK law, there is a box that says sex, and it must contain the words male or female. Can't contain anything else. It can't be blank. It can't be anything else. And then there's the Coroners and Justice Act, which says who can sign these pieces of paper, who can design these rulings and all this nonsense. And it's all about inquests and stuff. And there's the thing that if you're a trans person, you get the joys of the Gender Recognition Act, which is a judicial proceeding that you're not allowed to be legally represented at, to do it yourself, where you have the British government inspect your medical records and your social history and your administrative records so that you can prove to the government that you're male enough or female enough for them to say, yes, you're now legally male, or yes, you're now legally female. And then they'll give you a piece of paper that says, we recognize you as the gender that you have selected, as the sex you have selected. With gender recognition certificate, and I have one. But that's not the end of it. That's not the end of it. That's where you think it's all going to end. That doesn't actually swap your birth certificate. You've then got to go to the General Registrar's office, and then you've got to go, I now want to change my birth certificate. And only once you've gone and changed your birth certificate does it then concertina to what allows a coroner to match all your documents up.
Yeah.
So
It's
a few years ago, in 2019, I'm sorry, I cut you off. There's a bit of a delay between the two of us. I cut you off. Carry on.
I was just going to say that it's quite similar here. Our Social Security Administration just passed a law saying that you now can get a Social Security card with the gender of your choice checked on it, which Robin was face palming over because Robin just changed his Social Security card when he changed his name a few months ago. And that was not an option then, but now that is an option. However, Robin does not have his birth certificate changed. And to change his birth certificate would require us to travel to Indiana and make a court appearance. which is, considerably more difficult. And so in order to get,
I've got
let's
one
see,
more.
what was,
I've got
I don't know.
I've got a slightly esoteric but slightly fundamental question in America.
I'll
Why
be
are
right
you still
back.
issuing Social Security cards? Why are you still issuing physical pieces of, I'm assuming, plastic now?
No, it's paper.
That say,
There's still
oh,
paper.
there's still paper. You haven't even upgraded to plastic yet. That say a series of numbers.
Mhm.
In Britain, you just get a piece of paper through your letterbox, going, "This is your." You used to get a plastic card, but we abolished those because the environment and things like that. So that amazes me that America is still doing that. That's quite incredible that you're still as a country doing that. But what does Robin have in place if Robin was to drop dead tomorrow, or Robin was to be hit by a bus tomorrow? What's in place? What do
Nothing.
they have in place?
Absolutely nothing. In fact, if I wasn't here to protect Robin's rights, it would be a terrible mess. I think my husband would still. I think my husband would protect Robin's rights as well. I don't think my husband would bury Robin under his dead name. But if you look at Robin's affairs, Robin has never changed his bank account, and Robin has changed his driver's license, but not his passport. So Robin's documentation is all about half and half. It would be very confusing to anyone who didn't understand Robin's situation.
This is one of those things that simply being a trans person is a very difficult legal entanglement.
It
shall we
is.
say.
Mhm.
Because there are parts of the administrative state that you don't realize exist.
Mhm.
Like in the UK, when I phone up our version of the Internal Revenue Service, which is the Department of Work and Pensions, and I phone up the tax office and I go, "Hello, yes, I need to speak to such and such about my tax affairs," and they go, "Oh, you're that person. We need to speak to this special person to get special access to special section D, and we'll phone you back." And that could be up to 3 days later.
Mm.
Normally it's within about half an hour, but it can be up to 3 days later, which is a little bit absurd, shall we say. Just a little bit on the absurd side. And can I also just briefly ask for a mod in the chat to eliminate, random
The
sex
bot.
bot?
Yeah, the bot. I was about to say that too. I was waiting for a break.
But, random sex bot aside, I mean, I am sexy, but I'm not a random sex bot. You can get those, but this is not the place for them. The administrative state has its fingers in an awful lot of pies that you don't really realize. So you have your birth certificates, your passport, and your driving license. Yeah, those are the obvious ones. But what about school leaving certificates? What about university degrees? What about employment records? What about job references? And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And this is where it gets absurd. So, in 2019, a woman in Manchester, England, took her own life. And throughout the proceedings, there was coroner's inquest because, suicide of this woman. And the coroner said that because she didn't have a piece of paper from the UK government that said the UK government recognised you as being trans enough to get a certificate that says that you're female, meant that throughout the whole proceedings, she had to be referred to as male, as a man, And this is where the system is at fault. Because the system has no compassion in it. Because the system thinks everybody's like me, or the system expects everybody to be like me. And when I say be like me, I mean a legalistic nutbag. Somebody that takes a genuine interest in getting every scintilla of everything in place. I mean, I've gone all the way back and I've changed all my school certificates. I mean, I've gone that deep into my past. But what this did was it meant that on the death certificate that was issued, it had her name, as is in this article, that she had changed legally. And the sex field as male. And anybody who says that that is the correct way to do things is frankly talking out of the side of their mouth and is absolutely detached from reality. Because who does this benefit? Who benefits from this kind of administrative rigidity? Nobody.
I'd like
the
to comment.
story doesn't end there. You can comment in a second, because the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
And when I say the story doesn't end there, 18 months later, her partner killed herself. Partly because of the trauma that the family and she went through in the inquest. And this is where it is all lost. It may be acceptable at an esoteric level, at a legal level, to have these rigid rules in place. But these rules cause harm that is unnecessary. And it does kill people, albeit indirectly, because of the trauma that is being piled on top of trauma. And that is unnecessary. And that is wrong.
Everything you said, I agree with Phoebe, absolutely everything. But I think another big chunk that we have to look at to understand why this occurs and why this whole thing is just such a mess, whether it's death certificates or passports or driver's license or whether or not your parents can take you to treatment. It's because our society is so completely rigid, stuck on the concept of binary sexuality, that there's just no room for the realization that trans people exist, that intersex people exist, that NBs exist, and
I think that what the system sees is that, yeah, you can exist, but you have to select option A or option B. And you have to go all the way through option A and option B until you come out the other side.
It's worse here than that.
Now, Granny, the thing I was thinking of when you were speaking before about Robin's going to have a problem if he doesn't change the birth certificate. I'm in the situation right now myself that I have a birth certificate that hasn't been changed. So I cannot have a new driver's license in Minnesota, and I cannot vote because the driver's license requires my birth certificate to get a new license, and it doesn't have my name and it doesn't have my gender. And the voting requires a real ID certified or acceptable identification, piece of identification, a driver's license or a state ID to register you as a voter. Okay, and when I was saying the real ID thing, that's the regulation that the federal government has, thanks to Jim Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin, that says only certain types of reviewed and approved sources of information qualify somebody for a real ID document, whether it's a state ID or if it's a driver's license. And if you don't have that, you're not even going to be allowed to get on a damn airplane.
Okay, but Robin has a real ID driver's license with the Social Security card and the letter from the court indicating that Robin's name had been legally changed. With those two documents, we were able to get a driver's license.
Well, the near state is easier to get along than Minnesota.
I'm thinking you wouldn't even have to be trans. I mean, my name isn't the same as my name on my birth certificate because I go by my married name. And, I can show my marriage license and my birth certificate, and between the two of those documents, it shows that this is who I am. You should be able to show your birth certificate with the old name and your legal document changing your name, and that should be sufficient.
I'm not certain. I also, quite honestly, don't want to go through that humiliation.
Yeah.
I live in a small town. As soon as I do that, the person behind the desk can tell everybody in town. And then
That's true.
I'm
Are you required to do this in the county where you reside?
Pardon?
Are you required to do this in the county where you reside?
Well, driver's license, no, but voting, absolutely.
But what I'm saying is, are you also entitled to do it online? Can you register to vote online? If when you change your driving license, can you register to vote at the same time?
No, they're different departments.
We can register to vote online.
Because I know that the state of Michigan, you can register to vote online. I know in the state of Florida, when you change your driving license or you convert your driving license, whichever one you're doing, they will say, do you want to register to vote under the Motor Voter Act? So that may be something that you may be worth looking into, whether it is a possibility in your state, whether your state has signed up to the Motor Voter Act.
I haven't seen such a thing. It may be and I will take the time to investigate that because I've heard that before. But as it is right now, the state of Minnesota expects to have hands-on a birth certificate that they can look at. I have a photographic copy of my birth certificate, but that's not acceptable because it's not the real document.
Well, nobody gets the real document. You get a certified copy. When you write to the courthouse for a birth certificate, they won't give you the original. The original always stays in the courthouse. You just get a certified copy.
Right, the one that the parents were handed to when they registered you to begin with. Yeah, that I have a photograph of that.
But you can write to your courthouse and get another certified copy, or as many certified copies as you want. Although they usually charge you like $5 or $10 per copy. Yeah,
that was the problem. They couldn't find it last time I tried that.
And that does sometimes happen. If there's a fire in the courthouse and all of those documents get destroyed, yeah, that happens, and it can cause problems for people for decades. It's really difficult to recreate an original.
Now, Wisconsin does have the birth certificate laws for trans people, where you can now change your birth certificate, and if you have a judge who is kind-hearted, they can even require the original to be destroyed, so that there's no trail to follow, and that's what I would prefer to do.
So, where do we go with this? Because I don't trust an American politician as far as I can throw them. And I can't throw them very far. Especially if you're and I especially don't want to get close to some of the vile people like Bogut, Taylor Green, Jordan. Oh. Where do we go with this?
Well, my wish, if I could, run the world, is to inform trans people of this issue, what they have to do to deal with it, without changing it and getting everybody all excited about it and causing Republicans to start legislating against us once again. So I'm thinking, contacts of 1 or 2 people at a time, a small forum like this, that sort of situation. It's something that trans people should be talking about and be aware of. It's because it's when you die, you can't do anything about it anymore, but everybody else is going to decide what they want for you, and it might not be the people you want.
Mm-hmm.
But
so that's my own purpose.
Here's a question for you, Granny. Do you have a will?
Sort of.
The next question is, does that will contain the correct details for Robin?
Okay. First, I went and got a will made 3 months ago, and I was absolutely in shock because I told the attorney what I wanted and why I wanted it, and he sent me a set of documents doing exactly the opposite of what I said. So I said, no, this isn't what I said. This isn't what I want. Please redo the whole thing. And so he has, and I have an appointment to go in and sign the correct documents on Thursday. So nothing's been signed. And that's why I say sort of. It's been written, but it hasn't been executed yet. Now, as far as correct for Robin, it does name Robin as the executor of the estate, and it lists Robin as Robin. I don't have any specific provisions as to anything supposed to be done for Robin, other than Robin receives 1/3 of the estate. Was there something else that you had specific in mind?
Because the issue you can have with parents is when parents write wills and they don't update them when a person transitions. So you could theoretically, well, not theoretically, you could in practicality have a will that is read for somebody that doesn't actually legally exist.
Mm-hmm.
So if, for example, my parents haven't updated their wills, because I have no control over that. This is one of the areas of law where I have no control. And it was to say my previous names and was to list me as my two, and they were to say my 2 sons get X, Y, and Z. It would be a bit of a nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no control over that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why I raised it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, my new will names Robin by name.
Wouldn't your documentation that you have for all the changes that you've done substitute that it would have a paper trail from the will to the current you?
Well, the original will, the one before this one, didn't name Robin at all because Robin didn't even exist at the time that one was written. It just says my children, if I have any, because I didn't have any children. It was written decades ago. And my real reason for updating was because of what happened with my parents. My mom transferred all of her assets to my dad, died intestate, but everything was already in my dad's name, so it didn't really matter. But then my dad remarried, transferred the vast majority of his assets to his new wife and her children, And what little he didn't transfer her, he transferred to my younger brother, and he also died intestate. But what's infuriating is that he not only gave away his own estate, which he's, has every right to, but he gave away my mother's estate as well. And that he had no right to do. And my mom would have been furious with him had she known. And so I had a will written up that completely cut my husband out and left everything straight to my kids. So he can't do that. But the attorney told me, you actually can't do that. In Alabama, you have to leave your husband at least 42% of the estate. I should say, I didn't cut.
What on earth?
The state, although actually, I didn't actually leave him with nothing, because I did say that he's to receive my half of the house and everything in it. So, at least he gets to continue to live comfortably and, with what he currently has. But, if half of everything we have earned is mine, like he claims, then I should be able to do whatever I want with it. And what really
Plus
was
8%.
right. And what really flabbergasted me was when I got the documents back from the attorney, it said that everything went to my husband outright. I said, what are you doing? This isn't what we talked about at all. And I said, I realize that the state of Alabama requires me to leave a certain percentage to my husband, but maybe my husband will decide to honor my wishes, even though by law he's entitled to ask for more than what I left him. Or I might not die in Alabama. We might move to another state, and I might die in a state that has different laws. So write the damn will the way I want it.
Well, I think that's a very good note to wrap up this discussion. Because
yes, Phoebe has to go.
I don't quite know how to follow that.
I'll bet if this guy was a doctor, he wouldn't tie your tubes until you're 50 years old, too.
You wouldn't hire what until you're 50?
Tie your
He wouldn't
tubes.
tie your tube till you're 50. Because it might change your mind, Women can't make these decisions on their own.
Well, thank you certainly so much for coming, Phoebe. It has been an absolute pleasure having you.
It has
As
been
always,
an interesting discussion, yes.
And before you go, I think I'm going to leave us with a lighter note, and that is a little joke that I thought of when you mentioned the waist of a good suit, and that is there were three men that were the best friends of a very wealthy millionaire, and the millionaire's three best friends were his doctor, his lawyer, and his priest, and his will said that all of his assets were to be liquidated and the cash given 1/3 to each of his three friends, but he wanted to take it all with him, and so they were to throw the cash into his casket at the funeral. And the three friends met up about a year after the funeral, and the priest said, I've got a confession to make. We really needed a new rectory, and I thought it was just such a waste to throw all that money into the casket. So I kept back $5,000 for myself, and I used it to help build a new rectory. And the doctor says, well, I've got a confession to make too. Our hospital just really needed a new kidney dialysis machine, and it seemed like such a waste to throw all that money into that coffin. And I kept back $10,000 for a new kidney dialysis machine. And the lawyer said, gentlemen, I am ashamed of you. I put in my personal check for the entire amount.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a lawyer.
On that note, I don't think we can go any further with this discussion.
No, there's a lot more research on this, and I'm going to be doing some reading about it and dig up what I can. It'd be interesting to get a chart of what each state does for this sort of thing, and get people informed. This is awful. This is just awful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll let Phoebe go, and Jenny and I can continue the discussion a little bit longer.
Good night,
Anyway.
Phoebes. Thank you for being
Good night,
here.
Phoebe.
Good night,
Sleep well.
everybody.
Jenny, do you want me to queue up that video from Ask a Mortician and review that a bit? Or
Sure.
is okay. Okay. I am going to put that
Do
up.
they get into the how-tos of
I
bloodletting?
don't know. Phoebe sent me the link, and so I've got it here. And I have not watched this, so I really don't know what it is, but I trust Phoebe. All right, let me get on
She's
share
English.
screen. Oh, let's see. There we go.
Oh, Kitsune Cavalier. Hi, honey. I haven't seen you in a long time.
What is likely their most important case of the year. In 2013, Phoebe Stevens was fired from her job as a funeral director and embalmer at a Detroit area funeral home. Not for anything she did, but because of who she was. Stevens wrote a letter to her boss explaining that she was trans. Years-long process of acceptance, she would be returning to work as her true self, wearing the appropriate business attire of a woman, which was a skirt, not pants, because Harris Funeral Homes, her employer, did not allow women to wear pants. 2 weeks later, Stevens was fired. Her boss, Thomas Rost, not even trying to hide the fact that he fired her for being transgender, claiming Stevens would be a distraction to the grieving families. So Harris Funeral Homes was sued by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The case made it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, who will decide whether Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination on the basis of sex, also protects transgender people. Basically, can you be fired because of your gender identity? To be honest, it's sort of fitting that this massive gender identity discrimination case started at a funeral home, because funeral homes are the place where I think anti-trans bigotry can have some of the most painful, violent effects. Many of you will know the case of Jennifer Gable, who died of an unexpected aneurysm at only 32. When her friends came to her funeral, they were horrified to discover her body in a casket, wearing a man's suit, no makeup, cut short. Even though Jennifer had been assigned male at birth, she had transitioned years prior and had a whole life, friends, colleagues, chosen family as a woman. But because your next of kin has all the legal power in arranging your funeral, Jennifer's estranged father swooped in and told the funeral director, "This is what you're going to do. This is how you'll prepare my child's body. This is the kind of viewing we're having." So, how much power does the funeral director or funeral home have in this situation? This is where it gets tricky. The funeral director in Jennifer Gable's case told the media, "This is what I'm legally bound to do. I was honoring the wishes of the next of kin." Yes, but that's really only half correct. Let's say we had Jennifer Gable at my funeral home. It is true that if her father is the only next of kin, I can't go against his wishes. That is to say, I can't cremate her if he wants her buried. I can't just hold a public viewing with her presented in a way I think she would have wanted or her friends say she would have wanted. It would be illegal for me to do so. However, funeral homes are private businesses. So if Jennifer Gable's father came into my funeral home and said, "This is how we're presenting the body, cut the hair, get a man's suit," no, not in a million years would my funeral home be involved in doing something like that to a body. I would tell Jennifer's father that we cannot do this and he will have to find another funeral home. As a funeral home, you have the right not to be involved in such nonsense. So the excuse of, "I had to do it," not really. You only have to do it if you're not willing to what's called lose the case, aka the money, to another funeral home. What's especially frustrating here is that Jennifer Gable had ways to protect herself that she probably had no idea were available to her. And given that her death was unexpected, maybe never even occurred to her to think about. But many of you are thinking about this possibility. Anecdotally, from book events, social media, message boards, a large portion of people who follow this death awareness, death positive movement are LGBTQ+. And I think the reason for that, if you have more thoughts, tell me in the comments, is because stories like this illuminate the real threats that still need to be faced in both life and death. So you come to this movement because you want knowledge, so you can't be taken advantage of or misgendered in death. And that's what this video is about, how to create a death plan that protects you, your wishes, and your identity.
I'm going to stop her there for just a moment in case you had any comments at this point. You still there, Jenny?
I forgot I was muted. The
Okay.
Jennifer Garner case that she was reciting is the one that I came across.
Right.
The family seemed to be extremely unreasonable in the writing that I read about it.
Yeah.
Bastard.
I see some comments in the chat that it was too quiet. I did turn it up at one point. Did that fix it, or was it still too quiet? Not sure. I don't see anyone else saying too quiet, so it was probably good enough at that point. Okay, we'll go on and listen to what she has to tell us about how to solve the problem.
FYI, this advice I'm going to give you here sort of works for everyone. Terrible parents or ungrateful children that you don't want in charge of your funeral can happen to anyone. You can embroider that on a pillow. First, know what you want. This seems sort of self-explanatory, but it's an important phase, a more personal, introspective phase, a fact-finding phase. This is the hard work of asking yourself what your opinions about dying, death, and funerals are. Do you want to be kept alive even if you're determined to be brain dead? Do you want to donate your organs? Do you want a funeral of any kind? Do you want to be cremated, aquamated, or buried? Before you ask someone else to execute these choices for you, you have to know what they are. Otherwise, it's like asking someone to pick you up a few things while they're at the store. And when they say, sure, what do you need? You're like, I don't know, it's too painful to think about. I get it, but are we talking ice cream? Veggie chicken nuggets? There are thousands of things at the store. Second, know who you want. Who will be legally in charge of your body? Now, your legal next of kin, parent, spouse may already be exactly who you want making all these decisions for you. I don't mean to make all the parents of trans people sound like the villains here. We had a family at our funeral home recently where the mother of our decedent was loving, affirming, and got friends involved in caring for the body. So your mom might be your top choice. But if your dad or your brother or whoever your next of kin is happens to be a delightful bag of bigotry, or even if they're fine, like 75% of the time, but you're just not that close, you don't need a reason to bump them from the top of the list and install someone totally new on the throne. This decision is also personal and introspective. My mom is my choice, not only because she's my mom, but because that woman gets shit done. Who is that friend, partner, or relative in your life who is a combination of kind, affirming, and logistically savvy? Third, ask and explain what you want to your trusted people. You gotta ask the person before you make them legally in charge of your death and funeral arrangements. Otherwise, that's not a fun surprise. Corpse surprise is the least fun of the surprises. Tell the person what it is you are asking. I find it's best to speak from both logic and emotion. An example might be, as you know, I am no longer on good terms with my family. That's painful for me for many reasons, but a big one is that I'm afraid what will happen to me when I die. I know this is a lot to ask, but you've been an amazing friend and I trust you so much. I'm wondering if you would consider being on my end of life documents. That means you would be my trusted person to handle my death and funeral arrangements. The paperwork is very simple and I have a very clear idea of what I want. So you see there, you're appealing to their emotion as a friend, and you're also showing them you've given this thought, you know how to do the documents, and you know what you want. If you gave that speech to me, I would be like, it would be my greatest honor. But of course, some people might still be freaked out by the mere idea of death. In that case, don't force it. It's not about you. Move on. Keep asking, Goldilocks, until you find you're just right. Fourth, get it in writing. This is the most important step. I can't stress this enough. Make it official. Get it in writing. Put a bureaucratic paper ring on it. What you'll need is an advance directive. You've probably also heard words like living will, or medical power of attorney, or healthcare proxy, or funeral agent. It can be confusing. It's confusing for me, and my whole job is to make this less confusing for you, so what you want is a combination of a document and a person. The document will state your wishes regarding medical care at the end of your life. It could also include how you want to be named and identified by medical professionals. Then you want your person, your healthcare proxy. This person carries out the wishes you put in the document. If you do nothing, the person with all the power will be your next of kin. What's very important here is that this is state and country specific. The paperwork you need in Alabama is different than the paperwork you need in London, which is different than the paperwork you need in Toronto. Some places have before death and after death wishes in one document, and sometimes they're separate. Get them all. Get all the documents. They don't take that long. Fifth, share those documents. If an advance directive exists at the bottom of a pile of tax returns from 2013 at the back of your closet, does it exist at all? Once you have your documents in order, here's how Harvard Medical School recommends you share them. You have a copy, and your trusted people have copies. Your doctor or medical professional should have a copy. If you end up in the hospital, your hospital chart should have a copy. The original should be in a super safe space that everyone knows, your freezer, for instance, or in a folder labeled Advance Directive, important, important, here I am, hi, yoo-hoo. Finally, you may even want to put a small card in your wallet that has the name and number of your healthcare agent. These steps are important for everyone, and unfortunately, they are especially important for trans people. We want our government and our laws to protect our rights, to keep us safe from bigotry and discrimination. But the fact is, until that unambiguously happens, we also have to protect ourselves and our communities the best way possible. We've been prepping this video for months because we wanted it to also have as many resources outside the video as possible. On the Order website, we'll have resources that will not only provide you with guidance and information, like advice on choosing your trusted person, but also step-by-step instructions and all the legal forms you'll need to protect your end-of-life wishes and identity. We've also teamed up with Cake, which is an end-of-life website that makes it very easy to store and share your end-of-life preferences. When you go to joincake.com/thegooddeath, which sounds like a sponsored link, it's not, we just decided to do this together. You can sign up for free or just poke around and check things out. You'll have access to documents, legal specifics for your area, and support. If you didn't see this announcement on social media, late last year, our organization was able to make a $6,000 donation to Trans Lifeline because all of you bought these gorgeous shirts by artist Sonia Lazo. This will help countless people with hotline support and legal name changes. No matter who you are, it's time to get those documents in order. Chop chop, do it, tell your friend. Have you heard that millennials are the death positive generation? This video was made with generous donations.
Okay, that was pretty good.
That was an excellent video.
Mm-hmm. My personal documents, and my kids have known this for a long time. I have a fire safe in my closet, and all documents that you would need if I was dead are in that fire safe. Now, the safe isn't locked. If a thief wanted to come in and take them, they could, but there's nothing of any monetary value in there. But if there was a fire in the house, it's the one thing that would survive the fire.
I don't have anything like that, and and as old as I am, and how funky my health is in the last few years, I probably should get my ass in gear and do this. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm sure that my nephew would be the person to use. He's brilliant. He handled my dad's estate thing without any difficulty whatsoever, and I know that he's very, very, very much a trans ally type person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, my fire safe is not that big. It's only about the size of a cooler. It's big enough to hold 2 6-packs of beer. That's all the bigger it is. But that's all I need because it's just for documents. But yeah, I came across that idea long ago when people were faced house fires and lost their marriage licenses, birth certificates, and it takes forever to bring all that stuff back together again.
I know my dad kept all my mom's stuff in their safe deposit box.
Yeah, that works too.
Except it's not a good idea because he went in and got the stuff out of the safe deposit box, but he didn't tell the bank that mom had died. Had he mentioned that to them, they would have been bound to not allow him in the safe deposit box until everything has been perfected by the will, which you can't do because the will's in there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, you're right. Right.
So don't tell the bank nothing. Well, does anybody in the chat have any questions about this? We can hang in there for another 15 minutes and answer any things that you may have curiosities about.
Yep, absolutely. Unfortunately, there's not as many people here tonight as there usually are. Yeah, I guess there were. I do know of a couple of other shows that were on tonight. Shannon Q has Andrew Seidel on tonight, and she started 15 minutes after I did. So I went, oh shoot, that's not a good thing to overlap
dare
with.
she? She's so smart. I love her when she takes on a subject and the research that she does for stuff. She is just so thorough.
Yeah, I watched her interview with Josh Bowen the other day, and I had Josh Bowen on too, and I was watching hers and saying, "Oh gosh, she thought of much better questions than I did. She was able to elicit some really good stuff."
And remember, people out in the chat, if you end up talking to family, friends about this kind of stuff, remember it's LGBT people in totality that have issues with this, and what they can do to a gay couple is just as bad as what they can do to a trans person. So it really applies to everyone.
Yeah. Actually, it's not even just the LGBTQ community, although you guys face it far worse than the general populace. But I was starting to mention some of the things that happened with my dad when my dad died. I couldn't get my stepmother to tell me what funeral home he was at and what the arrangements were. And I thought, well, it's not that big a town. And so I guessed which funeral home it was, I picked the biggest one that was the closest to where he lived. And I guessed right on the first guess. And they confirmed that they had my dad, but they couldn't tell me anything about what the arrangements were without my stepmother's permission. So I wasn't allowed to know.
Well, what a bitch. That is just awful. And actually this goes for heterosexual people too. Let's say that your father used to call you shithead when you were a kid and decides that's what it should say on your headstone. It's it's not just us who are in trouble here. Everybody should think about what's going on in their lives.
Hellbound Hillbilly says, I don't have any questions on this particular topic, just a plethora of frustrations.
Indeed. I'm right there with you, Hellbound.
And Sandy says it's important for everyone to get this stuff handled, especially when you know your family would do the opposite of what you want. Yeah.
Yep. And that's why I'm going with my nephew, because I've recently changed my mind about my brothers and how accepting they are of me. I've realized they don't accept me, they tolerate me. And I just don't trust them to not fuck around with it, since my plot is right next to my mom.
I like Johnny's comment here.
Yeah, you're like, face. Sure. You okay?
And Mage says, my tomb should read, you're next.
They do also recommend, well, we illustrated that with the lesbian couple. They do recommend also consider having all your headstone work done, or at least contracted and paid for prior to your demise. It's amazing what people won't do to fuck over their family.
Well, I actually don't really have anything more to add. If you do, we can keep talking. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and close down. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, Jenny?
Oh well, I've been dieting and I dropped another size in underwear.
Nice. Nice.
No, not really. Now it's all baggy and hanging out all over the place.
Oh,
Chafing, it's
I have clothes in my closet that are a variety of different sizes. After I had my back surgery, I had to go through a complete lifestyle change, and so I slowly got larger and larger, and so I've got a variety of sizes as I got larger, and now I'm really trying to lose some of that weight, and I've got a bit of a start. I mean, I've taken off 6 pounds, and, I think if I could just get down another 6, I would give up the set of clothes I wear now and go down to one size smaller.
Thanks, Von Rick. You're real encouraging.
Yeah, I was just gonna put up the
Yes, I do have cotton granny panties. It's true. I admit it.
I do too, although mine aren't baggy.
I just won't discuss my lace ones for you. That's all. Well,
Johnny
okay.
says that's almost a full stone.
I don't know what a stone is. Oh, for weight?
For weight, yeah.
Isn't a stone like 16 pounds?
I don't know. I don't know.
Somebody knows it out there.
Lone Wanderer says we need to form a weight loss support group. Keep each other going.
I would not object to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's start we'll start a DM thing on Twitch.
Johnny says he thought it was 7 pounds per stone. Kitsune says 14 pounds. We'll let somebody look it up. We'll let somebody look it up on Google and find it for us.
And the British also use like hand as an actual measurement too, don't they?
Yeah.
The hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you're talking to some guy about how he masturbates and he says he's a two-hander, what is that like?
Hellbound says it's 14 pounds to a stone.
It only takes me a gram or so to get stoned. I don't know what this 14 pounds.
Oh goodness! If you smoked 14 pounds of weed in one day,
you wouldn't succeed because you would have been asleep by 10 o'clock.
Actually, what I'm thinking is that maybe you have a fireplace and you just threw it all in the fireplace and just let the smoke fill the house. That'd be quite a waste of the weed, though.
Yeah, it sure would. Sure would. Well, unless it's a ditchweed. Well, okay. I guess I'm done. I've had my say, and
okay.
I hope this was educational to somebody.
Yeah, I found it educational. I was not aware, just how big a problem this is.
Nationwide,
Mm-hmm.
worldwide, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And it is so hard to convince especially the religious right, but anyone who is of the mindset that gender is binary, that people who are trans are not delusional. And that's the conversation that I have over and over and over, well, these people are just delusional, and trying to convince them that no, this is not a delusion. And even if it was, what difference does it make to you? Why are you so dead set on making people think the way you think they ought to think?
Because it makes them uncomfortable, and they think that they should legislate comfort. It's just a real sad scene.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. We've got so much more work to do, just letting people know that this is just part of life. Yeah. Okay, Jenny, is there anyone that you would like to shill for?
Well, I understand Purple's going to be home, and we're going to be doing his show tomorrow at noon. So
Okay.
noon Central Time, of course. I expect to be online for that. I haven't heard any cancellation notices yet.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good.
All right, old ladies with smoke pot are cool.
And next week, I do not have a stream planned for next week at this point. I do have a guest that I'm really looking forward to the following week. And so next week, I'm probably going to do just kind of a community building type thing. I'll probably have Kitty, maybe Purple. I don't know. We'll see who we get. And I'm working on getting R and Raw back. R and Raw recently did a video on the Texas Republican platform where they've just come straight out and said it, that they basically want to legislate God into everything. And so I wanted to have him on to talk about that, partly because Texas kind of leads the nation as far as Republican ideals go. You know, what gets adopted in Texas, next you're hearing it out of Florida, and pretty soon it's in all of the red states. Now,
Yeah.
over here in Alabama and Mississippi, most of us don't think for ourselves, and so all the Republicans here just follow whatever they hear going on in the other states.
It is so sad. I am so frightened for what's going to happen in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's-
Yeah, I just hope that every Democrat comes out of whatever closet they're in and votes, so that, you know, we get just such an overwhelming overwhelming turnout of voters from the Democratic Party that no one's ever seen anything like it before. That's my wishful thinking. That's my pipe dream.
yeah, I got my fingers crossed for that too, but I'm not confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me neither. Okay, well, I hate to end us on such a low note, but Halloween is coming, and so we've got scary thoughts about scary things that are going on in the country, and what's going on in real life is far scarier than anything that's coming out in any of the movies and any of the media anyway. So thank you so much. Go ahead.
Maya, people still think the Republicans are good for anything. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they think it's good for the economy. It's only good for the economy if you're wealthy and you're going to get a tax break because you're wealthy. Okay, thank you everyone in the chat for your comments and questions, and thank you so much, Jenny. This has been a pleasure, and this has been a really good conversation.
I've enjoyed myself.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Good night, all.
Live your life.
Love you, chat.